Welcome everyone, good Sunday, good, I guess, last day of the weekend. We saw ourselves at the start of the weekend on Friday, so now it's time to see each other again, and this time we have to talk about something that is relevant to my interests, and I think it is also going to be relevant to a lot of you, which is when exactly is this 9.1.5 patch going to come out, and more importantly, as a result of that, when exactly is 9.2 going to come out? We have talked about this already, and some people have advanced their thoughts and opinions on the matter, specifically regarding, with these patches coming in so late, does this also mean we're not going to have a 9.3 patch in the expansion? That type of discussion. Is it better to have a shorter expansion without 9.3 if it means Blizzard can focus on the next expansion, or would you rather have this current expansion drag on for longer than usual if it also means making space for 9.3 in the future, etc, etc. Now, the reason why this type of discussion is getting interesting lately is because normally we are not used in getting a 0.1.5 patch that is, let's just say, this large. Usually, historically, 0.1.5 patches have been this tiny little additions of quality of life fixes and small changes here and there. This was the last 0.1.5 patch that we had in BFA, and you can see that even though the changes look numerous, they're not really anything major. You have the new factions, which people were expecting to be released with the release of BFA coming in, the Kultiran and the Zandalari. You had tiny changes to micro-holidays, you had Worlds of Draenor time walking, extra portals in the portal rooms of the major cities, or the return of the Brawlers Guild. It wasn't anything major. Then, of course, if you compare this to the current patch we're about to get, 9.1.5, you have way more additions. You have the addition of the Legion time walking with the Mythic Plus doable. You have, of course, the Mage Tower challenge, and you have the whole breaking of the structure of this expansion with the ability to freely swap between covenants, which, of course, is going to open up many avenues for your characters to be much more free in what they choose to do. That is more significant than what we usually get for a 0.1.5 patch. So at first you would be saying, well, but this is good. No, we are getting more important things and more important changes in a patch that usually doesn't really give us anything major. So that shouldn't just this be a positive. It is. I'm not trying to down-talk this patch. The issue is when you start trying to figure out when 9.2 is going to be released, because at the end of the day, it's not that 9.1.5 is going to have a lot of content in and of itself. The major source of content of this patch, which is going to be the Mage Tower challenge and the Mythic Plus Legion time walking event, is only going to last 2 weeks. So no matter how good this addition can be, it's only going to last for about 14 days before it's gone. After which, you're going to be left with the other changes, the changes to the covenants, the changes to the catch-up mechanisms to more easily bring up your characters to renown 80, as well as bring them up to date with all of the different covenant and their buildings and their followers and whatnot, because of course, now that you can play all 4 of them, you're going to be needing some sort of help in being able to max all 4 of them rather than just one, which is what you have been doing for the past year. The fear in question, so to speak, is that 9.2 is expected to release later than usual, and as a result of this, Blizzard has pushed out a 9.1.5 that looks, or is, thicker than usual. Sort of as to say, we need to give them something, we need to throw them a bone while they are waiting for 9.2. Because unfortunately, while they had to wait for the longest first patch ever, which was over 7 months in Shadowlands with 9.1, 9.2 was going to be more of the same. And we couldn't have gone that long again. We couldn't have made them wait that long for another patch. So, considering the bad reception that the wait for 9.1 has received, we couldn't just do it again right in front of them. We had to do something in the middle, which is why this theory suggests that 9.1.5 is bigger than usual, larger than usual, and is also bringing many well-received changes to the game that seemed surprising at first. Many people put this with the current situation of Blizzard and the lawsuit or I should say lawsuits, pending on Blizzard and the general bad PR that has surrounded them for a while. So some people said, oh well, I guess, they are trying to do everything to get players to come back or something like that with this patch. But I think, unfortunately, the problem is a little bit deeper than that, is the fact that 9.2 is going to take longer to release, and this 9.1.5 patch was an attempt to stem the bleeding that is going to come from the second major patch of the expansion, 9.2, being a little bit late. This is where we have to go back to what we started looking at once we were wondering just how long the patches were going to be. This is where we were wondering whether or not this expansion would have had the time to release a 0.3 patch, which is the dates, the duration and the length of the patches of each expansion. Now, as fun as it is, Shadowlands already, as you can see, achieved the prize, the world first longer first tier. They have gone through 218 days of 9.0. I should say Castronatria tier, since we had a 9.0.5 patch there, but still, it was a longer version of a major tier, of a major patch of all the other versions of the game. So we entered 9.1, and at this moment we are essentially here. That's where we are, just about short of 100 days of 9.1. You can see that this was basically the same time in BFA when the Eternal Palace was released, the third raid of the expansion. I guess even the fourth or the third and a half, because we had Uldir and then we had the Crucible of Storms with Battle of the Zarlor, and then we had the Eternal Palace. So by pretty much all metrics on all expansions, by now we were already into the third raid. Meanwhile, we are in Shadowlands not even waiting for the next raid. We are waiting for the next mid 0.1.5 patch, which is going to come out somewhere in the next few weeks. The general speculation is somewhere between the last week of October and the first week of November, mostly because, number one, the additions and changes that have been data mined and added in the PTR have slowed down heavily. We are down to the point where only tiny fixes and minor changes are going to be added, and all of the major stuff we already know about. Everything is also already testable on the PTR, with one last exception, which is the Mage Tower challenges, and also a lot of the catch-up mechanisms are going to be enabled once you hit 80 renown, and you're gonna be hitting 80 renown on the week of the 20th of October. So speculation-wise, it looks like it's going to take another 20 to 30 days before it comes out. So once that is out, you can start looking and thinking about the 9.2 release, the 9.2 schedule. Now, of course, being very logical here, they wouldn't plan an entire 0.1.5 patch if it wasn't at least a few weeks away from 9.2. Because if 9.2 was scheduled to come out a month after 9.1.5, then you might as well not even have made them two different patches. The difference in time is far too short. There needs to be some delay between the 0.1.5 patch and the 9.2. So somewhere in the realm of at least a couple of months of difference between the two patches. Otherwise, right now, we would be literally have to enter the PTR of 9.2 to even make it believable. So clearly, it's gonna take at least another couple of months, if not 3, before 9.2 comes out. And this would bring the dates, this would bring the scheduled / possible release time somewhere around here. So not only are we going to have the world first, longest first tier in Shadowlands, it is very likely, I would say very likely that we are also going to get the longest second tier in any version of the game, because unless 9.2 is released before the 11th of January, we are also going to get the longest second tier of any game version of World of Warcraft. The current contender being actually BFA itself with its second tier. And that is also not really that bad, because that second tier, BOD, also included the Crucible of Storms. So it's not really that fair to compare it to the 196 days of BFA. And this is ultimately what we were worried about, or at least the group of people who had the same opinion, which is, okay, well, we are seeing the first tier being released and lasting a lot. Now, we're also about to see, with almost all certainty, a second tier that is also going to be very long. If not the longest ever, it's on track to being one of the longest ever, for sure. This is already guaranteed. So, with these two tiers being so long, how can there possibly be time for two more? How can there be time for a 0.2 and a 0.3 patch in the same expansion, if they're all gonna last somewhere in the same ballpark, between 650 and 800 days for an expansion? But that is going to be a question for the future. It's going to be a question that you can be worried about months from now. Instead, we have to look at the present. The present is telling us that we are in 9.1 right now, and with a solid amount of certainty, we are going to have to be in 9.1 for, at the very least, another 3 months, which is basically the same time we have spent in 9.1 up to now. You have to basically do it all over again, another 3 months before 9.2 comes out. And you can see why this is so big of a problem for Blizzard and why they would want to release a 9.1.5 patch. Players are already getting tired and bored of this patch. I myself making videos about WoW, you can see recently that the number of videos have dropped. Not really because I am busy doing something else. Even if I am busy, I generally find the time to make some videos. The reason is because there isn't really anything to make videos about. There isn't really anything entertaining, exciting to go over. Some changes in specs, in balancing, in surprises in the raid or in Mythic Plus. Everything has gotten a bit stale up to this point, so there isn't really much to follow. And try to imagine this to be 3 months longer. I myself have gotten to the point where basically I'm just raid logging, doing my weekly clear of Mythic, and then playing some alts here and there, but nothing else. So I can only imagine, for example, for people who don't even raid, or people who have less stakes in the game, how can they find their motivation to keep playing when faced with the fact that it's going to be more of the same for at least as much time as they spent up to now in 9.1, which is 3 months. So I can see why they had to resort to this 9.1.5 patch all of a sudden, surprisingly positive on all angles, with even some tiny added positive content, generally positive, like the Mythic Plus, Legion Time Walking, and the return of the Mage Tower Challenge, just to try. It's not gonna work. It's not gonna work fully, I can already tell you, but to at least try to bridge the gap between the 9.1 release and the 9.2 release, which is ultimately why it was so confusing to make the Time Walking event for Legion only last for 2 weeks. That was the part that confused me the most. If you were trying to get people to come back in the game, or at the very least have something to do in the game until 9.2 comes out, it looked like a no-brainer to keep up the Mage Tower Challenge until 9.2 and to keep up the Legion Time Walking until 9.2. People would have had at the very least something new to try since the release of 9.1. I am sure overall people are going to interact and engage more with the patch simply because now they have the option to bring up multiple covenants. So now you are back after a few months of 9.1, you are going to be back to having something to do on your main. Even if you are someone like me at basically max item level for the patch with nothing to play for, now with 9.1.5 you will have the option to bring Kyrian to Renown 80, and then Ventir to Renown 80, and then Night Fate to Renown 80, so that when 9.2 launches you can literally, finally, fully play the game like it was intended and like people wanted, which is being able to swap to a covenant with basically zero difference. All of the covenants are going to be at max level, all of the covenants are going to have all of their covenant hub things maxed, from the buildings to the followers, etc, etc. So many people will have more time in game, they will spend more time in game once this 0.1.5 patch launches because of this, because of the drive to finish, basically, to finish your character with all of these covenants. But I thought they could have done more for this, you know, keeping up the Mage Tower Challenge and the Time Walking event for Legion a little bit longer. I think it would have just helped people to stay engaged in the game more. Either way, this is the main question for today and for the near future, which is, on a smaller note, the release time of 9.1.5, which is going to be okay-ish, but then the more pressing problem of the release date of 9.2, which is for the moment on course for being a back-to-back world champion. After the world champion title of 9.0 of Castornathia tier, being the longest first tier of WoW, we are currently on track for also having the longest ever second tier of an expansion. So it is understandable. It is definitely understandable why so many people over time have grown more tired and more dissatisfied with the game and lack of things to do in the game, especially when some of the things in the game were not particularly engaging to do, be it Demo or be it Korthia. It's not something that really gets you playing, honestly. So for now, we can stop with this dissertation. As always, I am one of the main supporters, even though it goes against what I'm doing here with my videos. I'm one of the main supporters of the notion, of the dogma, that if you're getting bored with the game, if you think like you have gotten everything out of the patch for the time being, there is nothing bad or wrong in simply stopping to play the game and just wait to come back to play it again when you think it's interesting again. I think it's normal and it's a pretty logical way of playing MMOs. So that is something you might want to do, just like many others have done already with this current patch. Now, anyways, for the time being, we can stop. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you have enjoyed the content, you can like the video, leave a comment down below about what do you think this current state of patch releases is going to be, perhaps what is being brought by. Maybe it's going to be the COVID, the pandemic delay that has caused this in Blizzard. Maybe it's going to be other issues that happened within the development team. If you have some hot takes, let me know. As well as also, you can always subscribe to the channel. See you guys soon. And in the meantime, and to close this off, I am still a major supporter of stopping the expansion after the 9.2 patch. The shorter, the better.